Alright, so in this video, it's going to be the second video of my new series for installing aftermarket servos into the Redcat Lowriders. This one is going to be for the hop servo. Alright, let's get into it. Alright, so if you're going to be setting up an aftermarket programmable servo like the Jeffrey Super Pump or like a black 300 or a new 300, something like that, first thing we're going to have to do is go over to the computer programmer just to make sure that we have the power on the servo turned up to the max and that it's at the ultra sensitive setting. Alright, let's go over to there and take care of that. Alright, so with the aftermarket servos, as a hop servo, we don't need to actually change the travel at all. Just basically leave the travel as it is. The reason for that is because we don't need extra additional travel range. The factory range is basically easy to set up with and to use inside our RC, so it's best just to leave that alone. We want to take the power and turn that up to 100. We want to take the sensitivity, turn that on ultra high. We also want to have this, the loose PPM protection, set to release. Boom. We're going to go ahead and write that to the servo. And now the servo is set up to be used as a hop servo. So let's go back over to the RC and get to the next stage of the installation. Alright, so back at the RC, and what we're basically going to do now is we're going to set up, we have the servo plugged in, but not actually installed. And we're basically going to set up everything so it's all ready to go, mostly tuned and set up inside our hand before we put it into the RC, so that when we put it into the RC, the only thing that's really left to do is the fine tuning of the endpoints. Same thing like we did in the rear. We're going to make sure that everything is correct before it goes into the RC, so that when it goes into the RC, it doesn't accidentally break nothing. So the type of installation that I'm going to be doing is going to be the flipped servo method. So basically, you have the traditional installation where the servo is going to be laying in the RC like so, where the gear is towards the back end of the RC. I don't like to do it like that. I like to do it with the flip servo, with the gear towards the front. We use a shorter horn with a shorter push rod, and this gives us a little bit more hopping power due to the leverage factor. So either way, it doesn't really matter which way you're going to be putting it in. The process is going to remain the same. So the first thing, before it actually goes into the RC, we got to make sure that the servo is going in the right direction. So to do this, what I do is I put the switch directly in the dead center, and I put the servo horn on at noon. And basically, counterclockwise is going to bring the suspension up, and clockwise is going to bring the suspension down. So you guys see if our switch is making it go clockwise when it goes down and counterclockwise when it goes up. So go down, counterclockwise. So it's actually going the wrong direction. It's going clockwise when it goes up and counterclockwise when it goes down. So that's the wrong direction. So remember, I'm going to go ahead and switch the directions, and you can see it going in the right way. So we're going to put the stick back into the middle. We're going to go into reverse, and this servo is on channel 6. So we go to channel 6. Flip the direction, save it, and now let's see. So to raise the suspension, it goes counterclockwise. All right, and to lower the suspension, it goes clockwise. All right, so now we got the servo direction correct. Awesome. Go ahead and take that servo horn off. Now we're gonna go over to the endpoints. So go down to endpoints, hit select, and go to the channel that you have the hop servo on. For me, as I already explained in my other videos, I always have this side here as the front and this side here is the reverse. This is because I like to gas hop, and it makes it a lot easier to gas hop when you're using two hands instead of trying to do it all with just one. So my hop servo here is going to be on number 5 or 6. So as we look at the settings for 5 and 6, mine's going to go on 6 for now. We have everything at 65, 65. We want to really bring this number down low enough so that there's not too much travel. It's a very small amount of travel that's needed to actually do the hop motion. So we want to start off, we want to bring this down to 65, 65 before we get that installed. And then, so now we're going to be installing the servo horn. And with the sticks all the way down, we're going to want to have as if this was a clock, we're going to want to have the servo horn pointed at around 2:30. And when the stick is all the way up, we want to point it around 12 o'clock. So stick up, 12 o'clock, stick down around 2:30. Perfect. So now this servo is ready to be installed into the RC. Right, what we do now is we go ahead and put that servo horn screw in. Make sure that's in nice and right. Perfect. So now we got the servo ready to go into the RC. Now this servo right here, as you can see, it's the last thing to do as far as the tuning of the servo is just adjust the endpoints. It's ready to go into the RC. So let's go ahead and get that installed. Alright, so back over at the RC, we got the servo installed in the flipped servo position, and sticks down, it's at around 2:30, sticks up, it's around 12 o'clock. Now what we do is we want to adjust the endpoint on the low side. Now the way the suspension is sitting right now, it's at its lowest point. It cannot sit any lower. So what we want to do is we want to adjust the servo endpoint until this servo horn screws in completely without any tension on it whatsoever. So that we know at the lowest point, the servo is not being stressed at all. So, looking at it right here, we really have that at perfect point. Looks like it needs to go down a little bit more. So I'm just going to adjust the endpoint to make that go a little forward, which will be raising the value. Alright, so let's see what that looks like now. One more click. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and screw this in. It should screw on relatively easy. Now, the only problem is I can't reach it, so I'm going to have to raise that up a little bit just so I can get to the screw. In order to get it in there, at the same time I'm going to have to lift the suspension till it matches the screw points. There we go. You want to use the shortest mounting point on your servo horn, so the servo is, there we go, and bring that down. As you can see here, the pull rod is loosely fit when the suspension is at the lowest point. This basically means the servo is at rest, it's not being stressed out, it's not working whatsoever. We have the low side of the endpoints for this servo setup. Now we're going to do top side. Now when it comes to the length of the push-pull rod for the hopping action, you want to make this long enough so that when it's at the lowest point and we're sitting on the ground, this servo and this push rod are not lined up. They're not in line. You want to have this pulled up a little bit so that it's kinked the way it is here. You don't want them in line because you want to have the full travel of the servo to be giving you upward action. If it's fully straight, there's a small bit of travel that's lost in just arcing that curve. So when you're setting up the length for the push rod or the push-pull rod here, just make sure it's long enough to reach the shortest, lowest point on the servo horn, and that when it's set up, there's a little bit of a kink. If it goes too straight, then lengthen it. Then that's pretty much it. I mean, if it doesn't reach all the way here, just make this a little bit longer. And if when it reaches here, it's perfectly in line, you just make it a few millimeters longer so that when it's installed, we have that little bit of a kink there. Very important. So now this one is very important to go up very slowly, because when we get to the maximum point, it mechanically can't pull anymore. It's going to start tweaking all the plastic. So we want to make sure that we stay under that when we get the stick all the way to the top position, so that we can raise the travel range with the endpoint. Move this back a little bit with the endpoint until it's at the perfect point. So we're going to raise that up slowly. And it seems like I'm right at the limit. So it seems like the limit for this setup really with this servo horn is that 12 o'clock. Right here is when it starts tweaking the plastic a little bit. And if you tweak the plastic and leave it, the suspension raised up, it's going to start to build up heat in the servo, and that's going to cause you problems. So right now, low side set. High side is pretty good where it is. Now, as far as a normal setup for the hop servo, we're done right here. So most people, we have the endpoints set up for the low side, endpoints set up for the high side. Everything is installed correctly. There's not going to be any buildup of heat or anything like so. Everything's good. For the experts and the guys that are into hopping, here's a little extra tip, but it's going to come with a disclaimer. So this could cause damage to your servo, could burn out your hop servo if you don't pay mind to it and you're not careful. So going past this point in the video, if you decide to do this, it is on your own accord, and just know that it has potential for causing your servo to burn out. So when we have the servo at the high point right here, as it's adjusted, we're not tweaking the plastic at all. So it's not really torquing anything over here. You don't see anything getting twisted. If you really want to snap on the hop, you actually want to put a little twist into that chassis there. So at this point, you're actually going to raise up the end point by at least 5 clicks. And then we go down a little bit, we're going to see that you're going to see it tweaking that front end a little bit, even a little bit more than that actually. I'm going to tweak it up another 5. See how that goes. Oh yeah. See how it's tweaking that plastic now? For those hop experts, that's how you get that little bit of extra snap out of it. but it comes at risk. You know what I mean? You're putting a lot of tweak into the system, onto the servo, and if you're like just driving around and you're like, you know, just driving around with the suspension up like this, you gotta realize it's gonna be sitting there tweaking that servo the whole time. So if you're gonna drive around with the suspension up, just bring that servo stick down just a little bit so that you're not tweaking that servo while you're just playing around. Just use that extra tweak for when you're trying to hop. But remember, that's for experts only, and it comes at your own risk. If you burn out your servo because of that, don't say I didn't warn you. Alright, so with that, let's check out this, let's check out she hops on a single pump setup. Not too bad, not too bad. So with that, that's going to be it for this video. So in the next video, it's going to be installing and setting up the steering servo. And especially for a lot of the guys that are getting the new servo off the Jeffries website and putting them in there, this will give you the a good installation procedure to make sure you get that one set up too. So keep your eyes out for that. Should be up soon, and it's going to be basically A to Z getting a new aftermarket steering servo into the Lowrider. And yeah, that'll be it for the servo installation videos. So I hope you like this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.